And Dino, lots of reports around as well with this Nkunku to Manchester United story swirling that there may be a swap deal to be done for Nkunku and Alejandro Garnacho. We'll go into the state of the relationship between Garnacho and club and manager and fans at United at the moment, and I would say pretty poor on all three of those fronts. However, the Nkunku-Garnacho swap that's sort of been mooted because, of course, Chelsea have previously shown an interest in Garnacho. We can just put that one to bed right now, can't we? That it won't be a swap deal. It doesn't mean that either player won't be playing for the other club next season.
It doesn't mean that they won't wave at each other going down the M6 because they're going in opposite directions. But look, Garnacho is a homegrown player. Yep. So therefore...
As far as PSR
is concerned. And with Man United trying to get their books sorted, and obviously they've got, one person sat over every shoulder in the finance office at the moment, saving every pound they possibly can.
Yeah.
It might be dressed up as a swap, right? In pure facts and figures, Alejandro Garnacho will go for a fee.
Yeah.
Because that fee is then pure profit, and then it can be pushed against other transfers. And effectively, you look at like doubling your money on the transfer fee. But so if Nkunku does go for 35 to 40 million, and Garnacho goes for 35 to 40 million. I suppose
much better deal for Man United.
Yeah, it's a better deal for Man United, PSR wise, but also it won't be that bad for Chelsea because what was it? We said he was 52 million
in 2023.
Yeah, so there's a couple of years where his contract has gone. Yeah. If you look at 5 to 10 million a year in the contract's reduction in value, then it might be that Chelsea get their money back.
It's a small profit potentially.
Yeah, potentially. And then Man United, get rid of the stroppy teenager. I'm not sure he's a teenager.
Well, no, he's not.
He's 20
he's
now,
not
but
anymore,
still acting like a stroppy teenager.
Much more grown up.
Yeah, and then also Amorim, who was trying to force Garnacho into positions that he possibly doesn't want to play in, as I just talked about. And Nkunku fits the formation better at Chelsea. Garnacho is an out-and-out winger who would suit it better at Chelsea. Maybe it would work for everyone if they can sort his behaviour out.
Yeah, of course, because obviously Amorim plays a 3-4-3, but the two wide men are more. Yeah, there's a defensive workload on them, right? Yeah. Let's run through the nuts and bolts with Garnacho then, Dino. 20, like you said, he's much more grown up than the mere teenager, which you dismissed him as just now.
Well, my son's 20 as well, and I wouldn't particularly call him grown up.
Would your son picture himself, talented footballer as I know he is, would he take a picture of himself in another rival's shirt and post it on his Instagram in order to back up his mate?
What is he doing? What on earth? And to answer your question, absolutely not, for a start, because I wouldn't let him out of the house. I wouldn't let him out of the house with that haircut, but but that's another matter. But who am I to be commenting on footballers' haircuts? But anyway,
I daren't say.
But no, look, what is he doing?
This is just quickly then. This is obviously the picture that Garnacho posted on his Instagram. If anyone hasn't seen it, where have you been? But in an Aston Villa shirt with Rashford 9 on the back, and sort of in and amongst the backdrop of Amorim telling him that he needs to pray he can find a new club.
Well, we were unsure. We were unsure at first, and as you said just before we started filming, we were unsure if it was a bit of a deep fake. And
like the picture of
the picture of him in the shirt. I was thought, no, surely he's not that daft.
Yeah.
And then of course it's on his own Instagram. So whether it was faked or not, he's then posted it on his Instagram, and we're
either
assuming
way
it's
that
him.
image is
and backing his mate Marcus Rashford. I'm not entirely sure how close those two are either. But it's just two fingers to Man United and Ruben Amorim. Everybody knows that, Man United want Marcus Rashford out and want to sell him.
Yeah.
And so then one other player who could, if he was really wanted to, come out and say, I don't want to leave Man United. It's my club. We finished 15th last year. I want to prove that we can be better. I want to get in Ruben Amorim's team, and I'll do anything in my power to try and get back into that side.
Yep.
But no, instead, I know what I'll do. I'll wear the shirt of the club that one of our other players went on loan to with his name on the back. I mean, it's really disrespectful. It's really disrespectful to the fans. And to be honest, for Man United, it's bad news on two fronts. One, it's the negative publicity it creates, obviously.
Yeah.
Secondly, it's probably taken a few million quid off his value
Well,
as well.
that's exactly. I mean, sort of aside from the weird like Gen Z, like the weird thing that football has become.
I'm bigger than the club
days.
as a 20-year-old at Man United. Come off it.
Yeah, exactly. And I find it so baffling because I've always rated Garnacho. I think he's an outstandingly talented footballer. I think he had a real opportunity, until very recently, to be the future of Man United, and and keep on developing and go, look, I'm going to lead this charge back to wherever we once were. And I think there's such a good player in there.
He's one of the ones that annoys me the most, and I say this quite a lot. Like, I was a very, very average footballer, distinctly average, but I worked so hard to play the level that I wanted to play at. If I'd been half as talented as him, I'd play 300, 400 Premier League games. Because half as talented as him. And he's a player that's got that much ability, and he's going about things in this way. And, sort your life out, Alejandro.
But let's talk some facts and figures then quickly, right? You touched on it there quite appropriately. United, the reports are that they would accept, first of all, it was, slapped a £70 million price tag on it. Well, we can all put a price tag in the windscreen of our car out the front of our houses. It's what people will pay for it,
Absolutely.
right? And then sort of as the 70 million was sort of getting roundly sneered at in the football industry, there was a bit of a softening of the stance, right? Where it was like, all right, maybe a little bit of briefing coming out. Going, all right, maybe we'd accept 45 to 50, maybe.
Yeah.
But, let it be known that we value him at 70. So, all right, well, it's what the market values him at. Now, surely, given what I mentioned earlier on with those reports around Amorim's just said to him, you need to pray you can find a new club, mate, because you haven't got a future under me. The latest stuff with the Aston Villa shirt drama or the circus,
and he's not going on the
shambles.
tour, so it's
But what does that do to that now? Because surely the finance people at United, he's got a deal till 2028. So if we're talking about Mbermo, 60 million quid with just a year left on his Brentford deal, he's got a little bit longer, Garnacho, then, until 2028, 3 years left. Surely he would command the sort of fee United would talk about if you're just talking numbers-wise and if he'd had his head down. Yeah. But with all this, surely, what happens?
If he'd scored the winner in that Europa League final instead of being on the losing team, and obviously he had a strop at the Europa League final as well, obviously, because he wasn't in a team, then maybe we'd be talking different figures. But it's a buyer's market, this. This is not a seller's market. No. This is a buyer's market. Totally. And clubs don't have these enormous sums of money. They're trying to do these deals. So when we talk about Nkunku, Garnacho, that's like a sensible thing because it's a club that has got a player that's sort of surplus, if you like, in Nkunku, and then a club has got a player that is definitely not wanted, and so it works for both teams. But look, it has decreased his value, but his contract is still as such. But don't forget that Man United cannot be in a position with Garnacho that they are in with Rashford. Yeah. They cannot be thinking we need to loan this lad because he's not going to play, so we need to get the money back on his wages, because then another year goes by and his value drops again.
They need the
PSR. They're better to take 40 to 45 million now than they are to hold out for 55, 60 and not get it and end up with him for another 3, 5, 6 months.
Yeah, totally.
Napoli are also still interested, and and other clubs around Europe will be much more inclined to look at a Garnacho than when they can get him at that fee, because look, there is a player in there, isn't there?
Totally.
The only problem is he thinks he's the next Cristiano Ronaldo, and nobody is.